Princess Elira of Veltharion stood at the edge of her crystal balcony, high above the shining city that floated among the clouds. The twin moons of her homeworld glowed softly, bathing the palace towers in silver light. From her place she could see the stars stretching into infinity, each one a story, each one a dream. To the people she was the light of their empire. To her father she was a symbol of power. But deep inside, Elira was simply a young woman who longed for something more, something real. Every day of her life had been planned since birth. From the moment she opened her eyes, servants bowed, advisors spoke for her, and nobles watched her every move. She smiled when they told her to smile, spoke when they told her to speak. Her beauty was praised across the galaxy, her silver eyes, her long glowing hair, her calm grace. Kings offered treasures for her hand, generals pledged their armies, and admirals wrote poems in her honor. Yet when she looked into their eyes, she saw only ambition. None saw her heart. Elira had everything that anyone could dream of, riches, fame, and power. But none of it made her happy. Her laughter was polite, her joy rehearsed. And at night, when the palace became quiet and the stars were her only companions, she felt the loneliness return like a shadow she could never escape. Sometimes she would wonder what lay beyond the Empire's reach. What kind of lives did the people of other worlds live? Did they love freely? Did they dream without duty chaining their hearts? It was during one of these restless nights that news came of a great summit being held in Veltharion. Delegates from countless species were coming to discuss peace treaties and alliances. The grand halls of the palace filled with banners, voices, and colors from every corner of the galaxy. Among the arriving fleets, one ship caught little attention. It was from a small, lesser-known world called Earth. Humans were new to the stars. Many in the Empire saw them as rough and unsophisticated, too emotional, too unpredictable. Elira had never met one before, and her curiosity was faint. Yet destiny had strange ways of weaving lives together. The summit began with great ceremony. The princess stood beside her father, dressed in silver silk that shimmered like water. Kings and generals bowed before her, each trying to impress with their titles, their victories, their wealth. She listened, smiled, and felt nothing. The same emptiness echoed inside her. Then in the crowd of nobles and warriors she noticed someone different. He stood near the back, silent, still, and clearly not a noble. His uniform was simple, his boots worn, and a faint scar crossed his cheek. He was human. His posture was straight, but his eyes were calm, steady, and strangely kind. When her gaze met his, something unexpected stirred in her chest. It wasn't the sharp thrill of admiration or the shallow warmth of flattery. It was something deeper, quieter. For a brief moment the noise of the hall faded. The grand music, the voices, the laughter all seemed to melt away. It was as if only two people existed in that great hall, the princess of an empire and a soldier from a faraway world. She quickly turned her head away, confused by her own reaction. What was it about that man that felt so different? She had been surrounded by kings, conquerors, and heroes, but none had made her heart skip like this nameless human did. Later that night, as the guests dined and talked, Elira found herself stealing glances across the hall. He was always quiet, speaking only when spoken to, listening more than he spoke. While others bragged about victories and power, he seemed content to simply observe. There was a steadiness about him, like the calm before a storm. When she asked one of her attendants who he was, the answer surprised her. He is Captain Marcus Hale, Princess, a human soldier, bodyguard to his general. His people have only recently joined the alliance. Elira nodded, pretending not to care, but her thoughts lingered on his name. Marcus Hale, a human warrior among alien kings. That night she couldn't sleep. The stars outside her window seemed brighter, almost alive. She found herself wondering about his world, this Earth. What kind of place shaped men like him? What battles had carved that quiet strength into his eyes? She didn't know it yet, but that single glance, that single spark of curiosity, would soon change the course of her life. For the first time, She had looked beyond duty, beyond expectation, and seen someone who made her heart remember what it meant to be free. And somewhere across the vast night sky, a human soldier looked up at the same stars, wondering about the silver-eyed princess who had noticed him when no one else ever did. Captain Marcus Hale walked through the grand halls of Veltharion, his boots echoing softly against the polished floors. Everywhere he looked, he saw alien opulence beyond imagination, towers that seemed to touch the sky, shimmering crystal walls, and gardens that glowed under artificial starlight. Yet despite all the beauty around him, he felt like an outsider. Humans were still a young presence among the stars. Many alien leaders thought them unpredictable, emotional, even weak. Marcus had heard whispers, quiet, dismissive murmurs in the grand corridors. They spoke of humans as primitive, as if their strength came from luck rather than courage. But Marcus knew better. His people had fought wars on their planet when defeat seemed certain, surviving with nothing but sheer determination and will. He had lived through those battles. He had seen friends fall, cities burn, and still he had stood. When he first saw Princess Alara, he did not bow, did not flatter. He only looked at her with quiet respect. She was unlike any being he had ever met. Her grace and elegance were obvious, but beneath it he sensed something fragile, something guarded. He saw her loneliness, her longing for something that no crown or palace could give her. Their first conversation happened by chance. Alara had wandered into the quiet corridor behind the council hall, seeking a place away from the ceremony. Marcus had been checking maps and reports when she appeared, her silver hair catching the light. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether to speak to him, but curiosity won. "Your people fight even when the odds are impossible," she said softly. "Why?" Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze with calm eyes. "Sometimes, Princess, it's not about winning. It's about protecting what you care about. That's all that matters." The words struck her deeply. She had spent her life surrounded by ambition, flattery, and empty promises. But here was someone speaking the truth, someone who understood that strength could be quiet, that courage could exist without arrogance. From that day on, Alara found herself drawn to him. She sought him out during inspections of the palace, during formal events where others boasted about their titles and victories. Marcus never boasted. He never flaunted skill or status. He simply shared stories of Earth, of endless oceans that sparkled under the sun, of forests alive with whispers of wind and leaves, of people who fought not for power but for love, for home. Alara laughed for the first time in a long while as she listened. His words painted worlds she had never seen, and she could almost smell the rain on Earth, hear the waves crash on distant shores. In those moments she forgot the golden cage of her life, the endless expectation to be perfect, the cold scrutiny of the alien courts. For the first time she felt alive. But palace life was never without consequences. Whispers began to spread, soft at first, then louder. The princess favors the human soldier. Admirals frowned. Generals scowled. Even her father, Emperor Valtor, began to observe her more closely. In an empire built on pride and power, it was unthinkable that the princess would find herself drawn to a human, a mere soldier. Yet the more others noticed, the more Alara felt an unshakable pull toward Marcus. It wasn't about rebellion or defiance. It was about the truth she had discovered in his presence, that the heart, not titles or power, defined a person's worth. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace towers, Marcus escorted Alara to the outer gardens. The air was cool, scented with alien blossoms that glowed softly under the moonlight. They walked in silence for a time, enjoying the peaceful stillness away from the grandeur and politics of the palace. "Do you ever wish you could leave it all behind?" Alara asked quietly, her voice trembling. "The palace, the crowns, the endless expectations." Marcus glanced at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Every day. But running away doesn't solve anything. You carry your responsibilities with you. What matters is finding the courage to follow your heart, even when the world tells you not to." Her chest tightened at his words. They were simple but powerful. In his presence she could finally breathe. She could imagine a life that was hers, not dictated by titles or the expectations of an empire. As they returned to the palace, the distant stars twinkled above like silent witnesses to the growing bond between a princess and a human soldier. Neither spoke of the future, but both felt it approaching, a force stronger than fear, stronger than tradition. And somewhere deep inside her, Aelira knew this was just the beginning. This human, this simple warrior from a distant world, had awakened something she never thought possible. A feeling so powerful, it could change everything, even the heart of an entire empire. The palace was alive with motion, yet Princess Aelira felt a strange calm when she walked beside Captain Marcus Hale. Everywhere they went, the halls were filled with nobles and dignitaries, their voices echoing like distant thunder. But she didn't notice them. Not really. Her attention was on the human soldier who had slowly become the only person who made her heart feel full. The whispers began almost immediately. Soft at first, hidden behind polite conversation and careful laughter. "Did you see the princess with the human?" one admiral murmured to another. "She spends more time with him than with any noble," another replied. It was the talk of the court now, spreading faster than any formal announcement. Aelira felt the tension, but she tried not to let it show. She had been trained to control her emotions, to hide every flicker of thought from the court. Yet in Marcus's presence she could not hide what she felt. Her heart had found its echo, and no amount of protocol could silence it. Marcus noticed the whispers too, though he did not react with arrogance or fear. He simply continued his duties. With quiet diligence, his calm presence a shield against the judgment of the alien elite. To the other nobles, this human seemed almost untouchable, not because of rank, but because no one could rattle him. One evening, Aelira found herself alone with him in the palace gardens, the bioluminescent plants glowing like stars beneath their feet. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension of the court slipping away. "Why do they care so much about who I spend my time with?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with frustration. "I am a princess, but I am allowed to choose, aren't I?" Marcus looked at her, his scarred face calm, his eyes steady. "They care because they think you belong to them, not because they care about you. You have to remember, no one can tell you how to feel, princess. Not kings, not generals, not even an empire. Your heart belongs to you alone." Aelira's chest tightened. The truth in his words cut through the noise of expectations and obligation. For years she had been a symbol, a prize, a jewel to display. Yet here was someone who saw her not as a crown or a title, but as a person, a woman with hopes, fears, and desires. Days passed and their secret bond grew. They walked together in the gardens, shared quiet conversations, and sometimes simply sat in companionable silence, watching the twin moons drift across the sky. It was in these moments that Aelira began to imagine a life beyond the palace walls, a life where she could choose her own path, where love mattered more than duty. But the palace had eyes everywhere. Nobles and courtiers noticed the quiet connection between the princess and the human soldier. Their whispers turned into subtle warnings. Admirals would casually remind her of alliances, generals would boast of their victories, and distant cousins would hint that a princess could not afford foolish attachments. Even her father, Emperor Valtor, began to watch her more closely. His sharp eyes noticed her distracted glances, the way her lips curved when she thought no one was looking. He did not yet speak, but the weight of expectation pressed on her like a heavy cloak. One afternoon, a meeting of the council brought tension to a peak. Powerful leaders from distant empires gathered to discuss trade, territory, and treaties. Kings argued over resources. Generals boasted of conquests. Marcus stood quietly at the back, observing, listening, as always. During a heated discussion, Elira's heart raced. She wanted to defend him, to stand up for the human who had become the center of her world. But she was a princess, and rebellion was not an option, at least not yet. That night, she wandered to the balcony, staring at the distant stars. The whispers of the court, the weight of duty, and the growing tension around her felt unbearable. She closed her eyes, imagining Marcus's face, his calm expression, his quiet strength. She felt warmth spread through her chest, the realization that no matter the Empire's judgment, no one could control her heart. And somewhere across the galaxy, Marcus too felt the pull of their connection. Though duty demanded he remain alert, focused, and disciplined, he knew he could not ignore the bond growing between them. He had seen many worlds, fought many wars, but nothing had ever made him feel like this. A quiet, unshakable certainty that someone across the stars understood him. The palace would watch, the whispers would continue, and the nobles would plot. But Elira and Marcus had discovered something that no empire could take away: trust, understanding, and the first fragile sparks of love. It was only the beginning, yet already the hearts of a princess and a human soldier were quietly defying the galaxy itself. The quiet peace of Veltharion did not last long. Across the outer colonies, whispers of rebellion had grown into flames of war. Reports arrived daily: outposts under siege, transport ships attacked, and alien mercenaries striking without warning. The Empire, vast and proud, was suddenly vulnerable. And in the midst of it all, Captain Marcus Hale was called to the front lines. Elira felt a hollow ache when the news reached her. She had spent countless hours with Marcus, walking the palace, gardens, speaking of worlds, dreams, and the small joys of life. Now duty demanded he leave. The human warrior, the only person who had ever stirred her heart, would go to fight battles she could only imagine. He came to her chambers before departing, his uniform dusty from preparations, his boots scuffed from endless drills. Elira tried to hide the fear in her eyes, but she could not. "You don't have to go," she whispered, stepping closer. "Please, stay." Marcus shook his head gently. "My place is with my people, Princess. With the soldiers who need me. I can't abandon them, not when they fight for their lives." She bit her lip, the weight of her emotions pressing down. "And if you don't come back?" Marcus smiled softly, a small, steady light in the dark uncertainty. "Then I will come back. I promise." It was the last time she would see him before he left, the last time she could feel the warmth of his presence. As he saluted and stepped into the waiting shuttle, Elira's hands trembled. The stars outside her window seemed colder that night, as if mourning alongside her. The war was brutal. Reports trickled in, each one darker than the last. Human ships battled against overwhelming odds. Entire colonies were engulfed in fire. Yet amidst the chaos, Marcus fought with the same quiet determination that had first drawn her to him. Days passed with no word. Elira tried to maintain composure, fulfilling her duties as princess, attending council meetings, and listening to advisors. But every night she would stand on her balcony, staring at the distant stars, whispering into the void, "Come back to me. Please." The Empire began to pressure her. Nobles insisted she focus on diplomacy, generals demanded attention to security, and her father watched with quiet intensity. Her heart was heavy, but her eyes remained clear. She refused to let them see how much the human warrior had become her world. Then one night a message arrived, a small encrypted transmission from the front. It brought no names, no details, only a simple report. Human forces suffered heavy losses. A strike team went missing behind enemy lines. Her heart stopped. She read it again, unwilling to accept the possibility. Marcus, the human warrior. Missing. Elira fell to her knees, clutching the parchment as if it could anchor him back to her. The palace seemed to close in, the shadows of the corridors pressing down. She had known that war was dangerous, that Marcus was brave, but nothing could prepare her for the possibility of losing him. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry, silent tears spilling under the moonlight. The sound of the palace, the distant hum of guards, even the stars above, none could comfort her. She felt as though a part of her had been ripped away. Yet in that despair, a spark of determination ignited. Marcus had always been strong, fearless even when faced with impossible odds. If he could endure the horrors of battle, she could endure the uncertainty of waiting. She would not bow to fear. She would not allow the Empire, the whispers, or the nobles' expectations to take away her hope. And so she whispered into the night, her voice steady despite the tears. Return to me, Marcus Hale. No matter the stars, no matter the worlds. Come back to me. Somewhere across the galaxy, amidst the roar of war and the flash of weapons, Marcus too looked at the same distant stars. Exhausted, bloodied, and battered, he thought of Elira, the silver-eyed princess who had seen him for who he truly was, who had trusted him when no one else would. He clenched his fists and made a silent vow. I will return to her. I will survive. No empire, no enemy, nothing will keep me from her. The war raged. The stars burned with distant fires, and yet, in the hearts of a princess and a human warrior, a connection stronger than fear or death was quietly unbroken. Weeks turned into a blur of anxious days and sleepless nights for Princess Elira. Every hour brought new reports of skirmishes on distant colonies, human and alien lives lost, and ships destroyed in firestorms of laser and plasma. But no news came of Captain Marcus Hale. The halls of the palace, once filled with whispers of admiration and politics, now echoed with tension. Nobles tried to distract her with discussions of alliances and strategies, but her mind was elsewhere. Every sound of distant engines or the hum of communications made her heart leap, hoping, praying that Marcus was alive. Emperor Valtor noticed her distraction. He had always watched his daughter carefully, but now his concern was different. The humans were brave, yes, but they were not untouchable. His daughter's heart, his precious jewel of the Empire, was in danger, not from rebels, but from love itself. Elira ignored the court and retreated to the balcony each night, staring into the starry void, imagining Marcus fighting battles she could not see. Please come back, she whispered every night, clutching the small silver pendant he had given her during a rare moment in the gardens. That token, simple yet precious, reminded her that he was real, that he had touched her life in a way no alien prince, general, or king ever could. Then came the first concrete report. A human strike team had been ambushed behind enemy lines. Every detail made her stomach turn. The soldiers had fought valiantly, but the battle had been merciless. Marcus's ship, his squad, his very presence, they were all accounted for as missing. Nothing more. Her chest ached as she sank into her seat, trembling. The Empire tried to console her with promises of search parties and rescue missions, but words could not soothe the fear gnawing at her heart. Elira had learned something in her life. Bravery alone did not guarantee survival. Marcus had always been brave, but fate had other plans. Days passed. Weeks passed. Still no word. The Empire began to pressure her into fulfilling her duties, meeting nobles, attending ceremonies, and even considering alliances through marriage. They expected her to move on, to treat Marcus as though he were just another soldier lost to war. But Elira could not. Her heart refused to accept it. One evening she stood at the balcony, the twin moons casting their glow over the city. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the Empire pressing down, yet also feeling the fire Marcus had always inspired in her. If he is alive, I will find him. If he is alive, he will return. He promised. Then, in the midst of the despair, the report came. A small, heavily damaged human shuttle had been recovered near the outer rim. Only one survivor. The note from the commanding officer was brief but unmistakable. Captain Marcus Hale had single-handedly diverted the enemy fleet, saving hundreds of lives, including those of the Emperor's soldiers, but had vanished during the escape. Elira's heart stopped. Relief and terror collided. He had survived the impossible, but had risked everything, possibly even his life, just to protect others. The human warrior, the simple soldier who had captured her heart, had shown the depth of his courage in a way that no alien hero ever could. She sank to the floor, tears streaming freely. Her love, her hope, her faith had been tested to the edge of despair. And yet Marcus had proven himself not as a prince, not as a conqueror, but as a human, flawed, brave, and extraordinary. For the first time, she realized something powerful. This soldier, this human, was not just a protector of the Empire, he was the keeper of her heart. And nothing, not even war, could take that away. As she stared at the stars, whispering his name into the quiet night, she made a silent vow. No matter what comes, no matter the danger, I will wait for him. I will believe in him. And when he returns, I will not let the world take him from me. Somewhere in the galaxy, Marcus Hale fought on, unaware of her silent promise. But fate, destiny, and the courage of two hearts beating across the stars were already weaving a story stronger than any empire, any king, or any weapon. Elira knew that the coming days would bring more trials, more battles, and more pain. But she also knew that the heart's strength, once awakened, could endure anything. And hers had awakened fully, completely, for a human soldier who had risked everything for her world. The palace courtyard was quiet that evening, lit only by the soft glow of alien lamps that shimmered like liquid silver. Princess Elira wandered among the gardens, her thoughts heavy with weeks of fear, worry, and longing. Each day without word of Marcus Hale had been a torment, her heart clinging to hope like a fragile flame in the wind. Then, without warning, a shuttle landed with a roar that shook the courtyard. Dust rose from the landing pad, swirling in the moonlight. Guards ran forward, weapons at the ready, but Elira hardly noticed. Her heart pounded, a mix of dread and hope twisting inside her. The hatch opened. The figure that emerged was battered and weary. His uniform was torn, streaked with dirt and ash. His boots were scuffed, and his face bore the marks of battle. But it was him, Marcus Hale. Alive. Standing before her, as if fate itself had carved a path for him to return. Elira ran without thinking, her gown catching on the marble edges, her hair flying in the wind. She did not care about the guards, the council, or the watching nobles. Nothing mattered but him. Her heart cried out, and her legs carried her faster than she had ever moved in her life. When she reached him, she threw her arms around his neck, holding him as if she would never let go. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the sweat and grime on his shoulders. Marcus's own eyes widened in surprise, but then softened, a faint, exhausted smile spreading across his scarred face. "You came back," she whispered, voice trembling. "I knew you would, but I was so afraid." Marcus held her tightly, feeling the warmth and strength of her presence steadying him. "I promised," he said simply. "I told you I would return, and here I am." For a moment the world seemed to vanish. The palace, the empire, the endless expectations, all of it faded into nothing. There was only Elira and Marcus, two souls who had endured war, distance, and doubt, finally finding each other again. The guards and council members watched in silence, stunned. The powerful princess, the jewel of an empire, was crying openly into the shoulders of a human soldier. The empire had always believed in strength, in titles and glory. But now they saw something far more powerful. Love, courage, and loyalty that transcended species status and tradition. Alira pulled back slightly, cupping his face in her hands. Her silver eyes searched his, memorizing every scar, every line of exhaustion, every trace of the battles he had survived. You risked everything for them. For us. For me. Her voice broke, filled with awe and gratitude. Marcus shook his head gently. It wasn't for glory, Princess. It was just what had to be done. People needed me, and I wanted to come back to you. Her lips curved into a smile, radiant and full of emotion. Then you are mine, she whispered, and I am yours. No matter what anyone says, no matter the Empire, no matter the stars. He nodded, and for the first time in weeks he allowed himself to feel peace. The war, the dangers, the uncertainty. They were behind him, if only for this moment. In Alira's arms he found the home he had never had, the trust he had always sought, and the love he had never dared to imagine. Later, as the night deepened and the stars shone brightly over the palace, Alira and Marcus walked together through the courtyard, hands intertwined. The air was soft and scented with alien blooms, and the distant sounds of the palace faded into quiet. They did not speak of the future, nor of the battles that awaited, for now words were unnecessary. Their hearts had already spoken, and somewhere in the silent corridors of the Empire, whispers began to spread, not of politics or conquest, but of the human warrior who had returned, defying death itself to be with the princess. For Alira, that was enough. She had discovered something stronger than fear, stronger than duty, stronger than even the grandest empire, the human heart. And it had returned to her, battered but unbroken, full of courage and entirely his own. As they stood together beneath the twin moons, the princess and the human warrior knew that nothing could separate them. Not distance, not war, not even the stars themselves. For love had found them, had survived the fires of battle, and had made them unstoppable. The morning sun cast its golden glow over the palace of Veltharion, but Princess Alira barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the figure standing before her, Captain Marcus Hale, scarred, weary, yet undeniably alive. The Empire had been watching, waiting for this moment, and the air was thick with anticipation. The council of nobles and generals gathered in the grand hall, expecting the princess to bow to tradition, to follow protocol, to honor duty over desire. But Alira did not care. She had waded through nights of fear, weeks of worry, months of uncertainty, and now she would not hide her heart. She stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing with quiet strength, and took Marcus's hand in hers. Whispers ran through the room like ripples in water. Aliens who had once deemed humans weak now saw before them a love so real, so fierce that it could not be denied. This man, she said, her voice steady and clear, is not a soldier for glory nor a prince for conquest. He is the human who risked everything, not for himself but for us, for my people and for me. And I choose him, today, tomorrow, always. Gasps echoed through the hall. Generals shifted in their seats. Kings and ambassadors whispered anxiously. Even Emperor Valtor, proud and unyielding, felt the weight of her words. But instead of anger, he saw something he had never understood fully before. Love that could not be commanded. Loyalty that could not be bought. Courage that could not be measured in titles or ranks. Marcus, his eyes glistening with emotion, squeezed her hand. He had never sought recognition, but in her gaze, he found something greater than honor, acceptance, respect, and a home he had never known he could have. I do not know the ways of your empire, he said quietly, voice steady despite the awe of those around him. I am human and my people are new to these stars. But I promise this, I will stand by her, protect her, and love her for all my days. That is all I know, but it is enough. The hall fell silent. The words, simple yet profound, carried a weight no weapon or army could match. Slowly the tension melted. One by one, nobles and generals nodded, some hesitant, some inspired. Even the emperor lowered his eyes and allowed a small, approving smile. Alira's heart swelled with relief and joy. For so long, she had felt the weight of expectation, the chains of duty pressing against her chest. But now, standing with Marcus, she felt free. The love she had guarded, the heart she had cherished, had returned to her, and it had changed everything. In the days that followed, the story of the human warrior and the alien princess spread throughout the Empire and beyond. Tales were told of Marcus's bravery, his sacrifice, and the unwavering bond that had withstood war and distance. He was not a king. He was not a general. He was simply human, and in that simplicity lay his greatest strength. The Empire learned to see differently. They learned that courage could come from unexpected places, that love could cross worlds, and that a heart's strength was greater than any army. Elira and Marcus became a symbol, a reminder that even in a galaxy filled with power, hierarchy, and ambition, the simplest truths, love, loyalty, and courage, were the most powerful forces of all. Years later, travelers would speak of the Princess of Veltharion, not for her crown or her command, but for the love she had chosen. And they would say with awe and admiration, she was surrounded by kings and generals, but only the human warrior stole her heart. Elira and Marcus often walked together beneath the twin moons, hands intertwined, hearts beating as one. The palace, the stars, the empire, they no longer felt like barriers. They were witnesses to a bond that could survive anything. And somewhere, in the quiet between wars and the calm after battles, the princess whispered to her human warrior, "You are mine, Marcus always, and I am yours." He smiled, pulling her close, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest like a warm fire. "In all the stars of the galaxy," he replied softly, "I have found my home, and it is here, with you." The Empire watched. The universe whispered, and across the galaxy, hearts remembered what it truly meant to be human, to love fiercely, to stand bravely, and to defy the impossible, all for the one who had captured your soul. And so, the human warrior and the alien princess walked into their future, not as ruler and subject, not as soldier and princess, but as two hearts united, stronger than any empire, braver than any battle, and bound by a love that would echo through the stars for all time.